The Bloodravens. Follow the plan. The traitors shall fall. The Emperor granted us a vision of triumph. Bloodravens Librarian Ibrahim at the Battle of Gravitas. The Bloodravens. The Bloodravens are a Loyalist Space Marine chapter of unknown origins and founding. The origins of the Bloodravens are shrouded in mystery and are believed to be tied to a dark truth related to the Horus Heresy. This elusive chapter has always been drawn to the pursuit of knowledge and the acquisition of ancient lore. It produces an unusually large number of librarians amongst its ranks, as a high proportion of neophytes develop psychic abilities soon after their implantation with the Bloodravens' gene seed organs. The powerful Bloodravens librarians guide the chapter, enabling them to fight with a precision and calculated fury made possible by their ability to predict and thwart their enemy's strategies and tactics before they come to pass. These arcane powers have led to great speculation and some worry about the true nature and origins of this chapter and the rest of the Imperium of Man. As much as they are known for their bravery and combat efficiency, the Bloodravens chapter is also renowned for its obsession with recovering lost information and technology. These battle brothers have repeatedly shown a willingness to accept non-traditional techniques and extreme approaches so that some lost relic or tome could be recovered and secured within their vaults. Their tendency to rely heavily upon a higher than normal number of psychically talented Space Marines only serves to further differentiate the Bloodravens from most other chapters. Some members of the Adeptus Administratum believe that this reliance upon their psychers is a potential disaster, while others respect and fear the advantages these talented battle brothers have repeatedly proved to their chapter. The Bloodravens are now a fleet-based chapter, following the loss of their homeworld. Their own records have been expunged, and the ones kept by the Ordo Malleus concerning the chapter are sealed. Perhaps because of this, the Bloodravens are hungry for knowledge, and are particularly obsessive about discovering the truth behind their creation. After being cut off from the Imperium at large by the birth of the Great Rift, the Bloodravens were delivered the gene seed to make their own Primaris Space Marines by Shield Captain Apollos Pertinax of the Adeptus Custodes. The decimation that the Bloodravens endured as a chapter, while being cut from reinforcement and aid, necessitated a rapid induction of these new transhuman progeny. The chapter's apothecaries and librarians have researched their Primaris gene seed extensively for any clues as to the Bloodravens' unknown origins. What they have discovered remains unknown to outsiders. Chapter History. Though the Bloodravens have a long and glorious history of service to the Emperor, their exact origins and earliest days in the service of the Imperium are obscured and uncertain. Not even their chapter master or librarians can say with any certainty when the Bloodravens were founded, or from which of the first founding Space Marine legions the chapter is descended. The chapter's written records in its librarium only go back to the 37th millennium, though vague references of their service in the litanies of other chapters and Imperial Adepta prove that they existed and fought the enemies of the Emperor for many centuries before then. However, the records mentioned are either missing or locked away under an inquisitorial seal. The gaps in the Imperial records concerning their origins are so extensive that the chapter does not even know the origins of its gene seed or the identity of their Primarch. The fact that the Bloodravens' own records and chapter lore are lost along with those kept by the Inquisition on the chapter is a suspicious indicator that suggests that a concerted effort was made by operatives within many Imperial Adepta, including the Inquisition and the Bloodravens themselves, to eliminate almost all trace of the Bloodravens' past from Imperial records. Why this erasure was carried out remains unknown, but the event is known as the Unfounding by the Bloodravens. What is odder still is that records on the Bloodravens were discovered on Eldarai knowledge worlds hidden in the Eye of Terror and guarded by the enigmatic Harlequins. Since the Bloodravens prize the pursuit of knowledge greatly, It is ironic that the Astartes of this chapter know so little about their own origins, or the earliest centuries of their service to the Emperor of Mankind. At some point in the chapter's history, during their early campaigns in the Gothic sector, they took immense casualties in combat with the forces of Chaos, though no corroborating records exist to confirm this conflict occurred. It is told in the chapter that in the early days of the campaigns, the foul servants of Chaos were widespread and disorganized, with no hope of standing before the Bloodraven's might. But the machinations of Chaos are manifold, and this impression proved to be horrifyingly false. The cult forces were far more organized than they first appeared, and the centers of cult activity attacked by the Bloodravens were discovered to be fiendishly cunning traps. Many Bloodravens were lost in these elaborate ambushes, and in a blow that could have proven fatal to the young chapter, the chapter master and the master of sanctity both fell defending the retreat of the remnants of the first company. With heavy casualties and no strong replacements amongst the chapter's officers to replace their leader, the chief librarian Azariah Vidya stepped forth and took command of the chapter, becoming the first in the Bloodravens to hold the dual mantle of chapter master and chief librarian, an arrangement that would soon become a tradition for the Bloodravens. Known by his battle brothers as the Great Father, or the Father Librarian, Azariah Vidya used his psychic power and traditional methods of intelligence to learn his enemies' habits in minute detail, and then launched devastating attacks against their greatest vulnerabilities. A highly intelligent warrior, Vidya knew much of the history and bore the burden of terrible knowledge of the ruinous powers. He was also blessed, though some might say cursed, with tremendously potent psychic powers. He spent solar months studying the enemy's movements, tactics, and even their histories in an attempt to discern how they might be defeated. While keeping up the facade that the Bloodravens were reeling from the previous attacks, he utilized his warriors and those of the Astra Militarum to probe the enemy to see how they reacted, gauging their response. To some of the Bloodravens, as well as Imperial High Command, it appeared that he wasted his time. That retreating to books rather than steel and courage was no way to fight the enemies of the Emperor. Eventually, Vidya completed his divinations and studies, declaring that he possessed the knowledge to defeat the enemy utterly. The Bloodravens launched a sweeping counter-offensive that at first seemed to be organized in a confusing and uninformed way, striking areas that were virtually devoid of enemy activity. Each move proved to foreshadow the forces of Chaos movements, however, denying them strategic ground, sources of resupply, and later, routes of retreat. When the Bloodravens launched their primary assaults, they hit the Chaos forces at their weakest points with a supernatural prescience, smashing their resistance aside with ease. Fated with honors, Vidya insisted that the key lay in researching and dissecting the enemy's movements, but some Bloodravens, and indeed some of those outside aware of the story, believed that the powerful Psycho was reading the enemy's minds and gleaning the necessary information he needed to defeat them in that way. After the crushing blow of the first offensive, the rest of the Gothic sector campaign was short and extremely bloody, with the enemy forces melting before the Bloodravens' relentless assaults. At the conclusion of the rebellion, Inquisitorial Purgatus teams discovered dark writings and abominable idols that pointed to the involvement of the traitorous Alpha Legion, a fact that the Inquisition noted did not surprise Vidya when he was informed. After the resounding victory in the Gothic sector, legends tell of how Vidya took the chapter away to heal its wounds, mourn its dead, and reflect on the battles it had just fought. At the insistence of his battle brothers and the secret masters, noteworthy and well-regarded warriors within the chapter, Vidya took on the dual mantle of chapter master and chief librarian, one that was frowned upon by other Space Marine chapters who believed in a strict adherence to the Codex Astartes. Vidya served in this dual role for several centuries, and his heroic deeds are told in great prayers committed to the hearts and minds of every single Bloodraven from the time they joined the chapter as aspirants. Azariah Vidya led the rebuilding of the chapter, and the current organization of the Blood Ravens has been influenced strongly by the teachings of the Great Father. Following his example, the Blood Ravens will study their adversaries closely before launching precise attacks at key points. The chapter also has one more distinct trait. It gathers and guards knowledge with great zeal. This is a tendency of the chapter that catches the attention of some individuals in the Imperium, and is a cultural quirk that is not necessarily considered a good thing amongst the higher levels of the Imperial Adepta and the Inquisition. There is little information available, even amongst the chapter's legends, concerning its leadership prior to the Great Father assuming the mantle of Chapter Master. Many scholars amongst the Adeptus Administratum believe that it was his legendary role as Chief Librarian and Chapter Master that has led the Blood Ravens to value librarians so highly amongst their battle brothers. Some Imperial savants even go so far as to suggest that Blood Raven aspirants with these traits are deliberately sought out, as one might represent a true heir to Vidya's legend. Others argue that he may simply have set certain traditions in motion, so that the chapter will always be able to rely upon a stalwart contingent of psychically gifted members. A tome allegedly penned by Azariah Vidya himself, called the Apocrypha of the Unfounding, postulates that the Blood Ravens are a chapter dear to the soul of the Emperor himself, and that their history was hidden by agents close to the throne to keep them secret from the Emperor's other sons, but not from the Blood Ravens themselves. The Apocrypha argues that searching for these lost answers is not heretical as long as the knowledge is kept within the chapter itself. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Blood Ravens is the unusually high concentration of powerful librarians within their chapter. The Blood Ravens chapter possesses far more psychers than is common amongst other Astartes, and most of them develop their abilities only after they have implanted with the Blood Ravens gene seed organs. It is unknown if this is due to the nature of the chapter's gene seed, but it is not an uncommon thought amongst the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus that there may be some chaos taint within the Blood Ravens gene seed. It is said in hushed tones amongst the Blood Ravens that there is a special squad made up of only librarians that work secretly within the chapter. The librarians of the Blood Ravens are exceptionally powerful within the chapter's ranks, but whether this is due to the actions of the Great Father or is simply a result of the reverence of the Blood Ravens hold him in is unknown. The fall of Azariah Kairas. For millennia, the Blood Ravens have been largely identified by their obsession with uncovering secrets and their use of psychers as a crucial aspect of their martial prowess. Many of these studies push the boundaries of imperial tenets, often drawing the attention of inquisitorial elements. The Blood Ravens have consistently exhibited a clear willingness to study their foes prior to eliminating them. However, such knowledge can lead to tragic corruption, as in some cases mere knowledge can be irrevocably damning. Such has proven to be the case in the story of the recently defeated Blood Ravens renegade Azariah Kairas. Before that traitor rose to the position of Blood Ravens chapter master, he fought a valiant battle against a greater demon of Nurgle named Ulker on the world of Aurelia. While the hideous warp spawn was overcome, then epistolary Kairas was thought lost to the warp. His death was entered into the chapter's records, along with commendations for bravery, until 500 years later, when he inexplicably returned and seized command of the 5th Company. His experience within the warp tragically corrupted the librarian, such that upon his return, he became intently focused on spreading the chaos corruption to his battle brothers. Over the centuries that followed, Azariah Kairas hid his corruption while spreading his taint throughout the chapter. Those who fell under his sway became hosts for demons allied with the greater demon Ulker. In surprisingly short order, Kairas assumed the title of Chapter Master, taking command of the Blood Ravens and corrupting many other Space Marines. At the same time, he forged alliances with other demons and foul servants of chaos. Gabriel Angelos, captain of the 3rd Company, was the only member of the chapter's command elements to view Kairas' return with mistrust. Gabriel quietly and suspiciously investigated the chapter master at every opportunity, ultimately exposing the chapter master as a heretic and traitor when he confirmed links between the fallen battle brother and the traitor legions. However, the truth was discovered too late. By the time Captain Angelos was prepared to reveal his findings to the chapter, a large number of its Space Marines were already corrupted. Instead, Kairas declared Gabriel a traitor and initiated a vicious hunt for the valiant officer and his loyal forces. A bloody chapter civil war ensued, one that engulfed the entire Aurelian subsector at its peak in the last years of the 41st millennium. Kairas eventually openly declared his loyalty to Chaos and ascended to demonhood. The demon was slain, but at a great cost to Gabriel's forces. Gabriel ascended to become the new chapter master after a bloody purge, and many of the chapter's unusual practices continued to be re-examined. The chapter now must exhibit great care as it recruits new members to replace those who betrayed the Imperium, lest other factions push their dissolution at this time of weakness. Dark Imperium. Before the Imperium was torn asunder by the birth of the Great Rift and racked by the Noctis Eterna, the Bloodravens were still reeling from the horrendous casualties and internal strife suffered during the Acheron campaign, the 3 Aurelian Crusades, and the Kurava campaign. With the chapter barely at half strength, Gabriel Angelos ordered a regrouping and rearming in subsector Aurelia, and the bulk of the Bloodravens were able to return. The chapter master decreed that this consolidation was to be conducted alongside large-scale recruitment. Blood trials to find new aspirants were carried out on every world from which the Bloodravens recruited, and they were held more frequently. Production of arms, starships, and other war material increased. Angelos declared that, once enough of the chapter had been rebuilt, the Bloodravens would strike out into the galaxy anew, and bring bolter and blade to the Emperor's foes with renewed vigor. But this grand rebuilding was not to be. Scant solar weeks after initiating his plans, madness erupted in the skies as the Cicatrix Maledictum emerged, and the Astronomicon dimmed and flickered out. Contact between the Bloodravens detachments conducting blood trials and the chapter's flagship Omnis Arcanum became next to impossible. Ships full of aspirants were lost to the warp. All over subsector Aurelia, outbreaks of mutation and other psychic phenomena were endemic. Some Bloodravens, psychically sensitive as many are, perished or were driven to madness by the surge in empiric energies. Those librarians able to make some sense of the distortion reported terrible visions and nightmares. Some even of the great unclean one, Ulker, stirring in his prison in the core of old Aurelia. Entire astropathic choirs died horrendous deaths as uncontrollable forces built up inside them to the point that their heads exploded under the expanding pressure. Despite all of this, enough psychic infrastructure remained intact for scores of desperate messages to reach the core of the Bloodravens fleet, each begging for the chapter's aid as worlds across the length, breadth and depth of subsector Aurelia found themselves beset by demonic onslaught, mass outbreaks of mutation, and rising heretical cults. Gabriel Angelos, ever a warrior of honor, nobility, and an uncompromising stubbornness in the face of the enemy, ordered his Bloodravens to respond to as many worlds as possible within the region. Due to the loss of the Astronomicon's beacon, carrying out such commands was much easier said than done. But the Bloodravens persevered, rushing as quickly as they could to their allies' aid, using short, arduous warp jumps. Throughout this time, Angelos had his astropaths endeavor to send messages across the rift, what the Bloodravens called the Tear, to what they would later know to be the Imperium Sanctus. Several ships were also dispatched across the rift. None of the attempts were successful, and countless brave lives were lost. It was only when elements of the Adeptus Custodes, emissaries Imperatus, located the Bloodravens 7th Company under the command of Captain Atanaxis, that the chapter had any contact with the wider Imperium. In a tense meeting, the Custodes stated that the Primarch Rabut Gilliman had returned to lead the Imperium in its darkest hour as its Lord Commander. They also explained that what they called Primaris Space Marines were fighting for the Imperium in the tens of thousands, bringing with them supplies of the Bloodraven's own gene seed sourced from the vaults of Mars themselves. The custodies presented the Bloodravens with a gift from the Emperor, the means of developing Primaris Space Marines of their own. Eager to learn what this might mean, and what knowledge of the chapter's origins they could yield from this, Captain Atanaxis accepted, though what real choice he had in the matter is debatable. Many Terran years later, with the Indomitus Crusade in full swing and its fleets rushing to the aid of beleaguered star systems across the galaxy, hundreds of Primaris Space Marines clad in Bloodraven's colours now wage war in the Emperor's name. Armed with all the panoply of war created by Archmagos Belisarius Kor, they bring death to their enemies across Subsector Aurelia and beyond, their forces combating the malignant hordes of the archenemy wherever they find them, be they clawing their way out of the storm of the Emperor's wrath, or laying siege to the Somnium stars. Using their talents for research, the Bloodravens apothecaries and librarians applied every kind of scrutiny known to them to the new gene seed and Primaris creation technology provided for them. What they might have discovered is naught but suspicion and conjecture to any outside the chapter who know of the Bloodravens' deep desire to seek out knowledge of their origins. The Secret Masters in particular have made a point of ensuring that the knowledge that they have gleaned remains secret, going to great lengths to secure it against any eyes that might pry where they are not welcome. Chapter Organization. The Bloodravens identify themselves as a chapter that stays closely within the criteria demanded by the Codex Astartes. By the standards of someone who has little interaction with Space Marines, this is a reasonably accurate description. However, compared to many of the more conservative chapters, particularly the successor chapters of the Ultramarines and Imperial Fist Legions, the Bloodravens exhibit a significant level of variation from the standard procedures as dictated by the Codex. While the Bloodravens followed the Codex Astartes in spirit, if not letter, their passion for knowledge was instilled into the chapter through the Great Father's example. As a result, the Bloodravens maintain one of the most extensive, well-organized and detailed archives ever seen in a Space Marine chapter, rivaling even the ancient records of many of the first founding chapters. Librarians carefully studying the chapter's records in an attempt to find hints as to the chapter's deeper origins have found anomalous data and even strange gaps on occasion. Those brave or foolhardy enough to do so whisper that perhaps Azariah Vidya himself may have had a hand in removing the relevant records, though none have the evidence to demonstrate such an allegation. The Bloodravens' basic company organization is consistent with the directives of the Codex. The Bloodravens maintain 10 standard companies. Each of these companies maintain the status, combat specializations, and training protocols as dictated per the Codex. This is in spite of the fact that the chapter is fleet-based, so companies may be forced to separate due to extensive assignments aboard vessels directed to separate portions of the Imperium. The most sweeping change within the Bloodravens company leadership is that all company commanders take a member of the Librarian on as a trusted advisor, who aids in preparation for all battles. In some instances, these librarians even go on to assume the title of company commander in the event of battlefield losses. The first company of the Bloodravens includes several squads made up entirely of librarians, which are dispatched on only the most important missions, though what these may be is unknown. The Chapter Master of the Bloodravens also traditionally holds the dual role of Chapter Master and Chief Librarian, a tradition dating back to when the Great Father, Azariah Vidya, was the first to do so. Whatever the reason for such a large number of librarians in the ranks of the Bloodravens, they are an integral part of the chapter. For instance, the Ninth Company had no less than 4 librarians attached to it, though with the recent deaths of brothers Berald and Rama, that number dropped to 2. Other librarians of note in the chapter are Isidore Achios, the former librarian of the Third Company before he turned traitor, Father Jonas, who was previously stationed on the chapter's recruiting world of Rahi's Paradise, and the 2 other 9th Company librarians, Zaphel and Corinth. After the Third Aurelian Crusade and the death of the corrupted Azariah Kairas, the Blood Ravens have become intensely focused on the identification and elimination of the traitor legions and those allied with the warp. In several instances, Imperial pleas for assistance with other threats have gone unanswered, so that the Blood Ravens could continue to pursue their own agenda against chaos. It is too early to tell if this is a long-term change in the chapter's outlook, or simply a short-term strategy necessitated by extraordinary circumstances. As a fleet-based chapter, the Blood Ravens recruit from many different worlds, and recruitment, training, and implantation of gene seed organs in aspirants can be done by nearly every capital ship in the Blood Ravens fleet. The reserve of the chapter's gene seed is spread throughout all of its primary starships, stored in the implantation chambers aboard each vessel. These chambers are the most protected on any Blood Raven starship, and will be defended by the Blood Ravens with their lives if need be, for these chambers contain the essence of the chapter's future. The chapter is based out of the battle barge Omnis Arcanum that serves as a mobile fortress monastery for the chapter. It is from the Omnis Arcanum that the Blood Ravens chapter master directs the efforts of the chapter's companies, and where the great Librarian Sanctorum of the chapter stores all the knowledge gathered by the chapter in the pursuit of its duties. Like many Astartes chapters, the Blood Ravens maintain an honor guard for the chapter master. The honor guard under Azariah Kairas was led by Captain Apollo Diomedes, the physical embodiment of the chapter master's will. The Blood Ravens have suffered heavy losses in recent times during the Tartarus campaign, the Dark Crusade, the Korava campaign, the first 2 Aurelian Crusades, and the Inquisition's recent purge of the Aurelian subsector, all of which has led to the loss of a number of the chapter's recruiting worlds. It will take some time to rebuild the chapter's numbers from such losses, and with every recruiting world that has been ravaged, the Blood Ravens' future prospects have become that much darker. Specialist Formations. Ordo Saikana. The Ordo Saikana, also known as the Secret Order of Saikana, is an elite body within the Blood Ravens chapter that consists of the most powerful of the chapter's librarians, and armies of servitors that embark upon missions to recover archaeotech, ancient relics of the chapter, and other lost human knowledge. The Secret Masters. The Secret Masters are elite warriors of the chapter who are held in high regard by their peers. They help to set the Blood Ravens' direction alongside the chapter master. The chapter masters know many of the more esoteric secrets of the chapter and are sworn to keep them hidden. The Second Company. During the Kronos campaign, the Second Company and attached elements from some of the other companies of the chapter found themselves in battle with the undying constructs known as the Necrons. For beneath the surface of the planet they encountered a large Necron army in a legendary battle beneath the Surabis Plateau. They eventually emerged victorious after their company commander, Captain Davion Thule, successfully planted a bomb deep within the catacombs and detonated it, collapsing the caverns right on top of the still emerging Necron army. The Second Company later added a Necron skull to their heraldry, in reference to this glorious action, and adopted the motto, "Victory over Death." The Fifth Company. The Fated. The Blood Ravens' Fifth Company is known as the Fated, and though the reasons for this are unclear, the name possibly harkens back to an incident from the 38th millennium, which was recorded in the chapter's Librarian, but never spoken of openly. The Fifth Company of that era was lost in the warp, and the great bell of souls on Terra tolling 100 times for each lost battle brother. But the truth of the matter is far darker. It is whispered that one of the company's librarians was seduced by the lure of the ruinous powers, and turned his brethren to evil. Though, of course, this notion is dismissed by the chapter today. No records exist as to the ultimate fate of this company, or whether such a traitor was ever brought to justice. The Blood Ravens have a special hatred for those whom turn from the Emperor's light, and to this day, the battle brothers of this company wear badges of shame and penitence upon their armor. though none will reveal the reasons for doing so. Bloodraven's Librarians. Like their fellow Astartes chapters, the Bloodravens also maintain a librarium of potent psychers, who are highly talented and trained to master the power of the warp at the highest levels. Each chapter selects its librarians in its own way, either from seed worlds, as it does with the bulk of its initiates, or from the ranks of gifted psychers brought to the Scholastica Saikana of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. The librarians of the chapter also fulfill a number of more secretive and specialized roles, including stewardship of the Great Librarium of the Omnis Arcanum and the secret orders of Saikana who maintain the Sanctorium Arcanum aboard the battle barge Litany of Fury. The Omnis Arcanum serves as the Bloodraven's mobile fortress monastery, as it is the largest battle barge within the chapter's fleet. The chapter's Librarium Sanctorum contains countless scrolls, tomes, and computational engines that store the chapter's records, roll of honor, and the ancient, and often forbidden, lore that they have recovered during their ongoing research. The path to becoming a space marine is long and arduous and fraught with peril, but it is a more straightforward path to tread when compared to the hardships an aspirant must endure to become a space marine librarian. Deadly trials and terrifying ordeals that test an aspirant's strength of will, character, and psychic resilience are necessarily harsh to ensure that the potential librarian has the power to resist the predations of warp creatures and etheric entities that inhabit the haunted depths of the Empyrean. Those who fail in such endeavors usually either die in agony during the testing or are swiftly executed as potential conduits for warp creatures. But there are others who fail in their test, but are so ravaged by it that they are no longer sane or, in some cases, even humanoid in form anymore. These poor, unfortunate individuals are taken in pentagrammatically warded chains to a shuttered, lonely place on the Omnis Arcanum, known as the Tower, where they are studied by the chapter's librarians to better understand what makes an aspirant fail, and how they might hone the minds of others who take the trials. It is a horrifying place, echoing to the sounds of lunatic screams, and shunned by all save those who must brave the soul-destroying terror of those condemned to this place. What happens behind the locked and boarded doors of the tower is never spoken of, but there are dark tales of beasts conjured from beyond the veil, are briefly allowed to manifest in the flesh of those incarcerated within the tower, before being banished back to the warp. The veracity of such tales is suspect, to say the least, but were they proven true, they could potentially be the chapter's undoing. Bloodraven librarians have a number of unique psychic abilities only used by the psychers of their chapter. Battle Sight. Bloodraven's librarians can pierce the fog of war well fought, casting their mind far and wide across a battlefield, world, or even star system for hints and clues of the movements and deployments of their enemy. Truth Seeker. Bloodraven's librarians spend much of their lives seeking knowledge and looking into the origins of their chapter, by sifting through the secrets of the past. Truth Seeker allows a librarian to find details and clues that he might have otherwise missed, drawing his attention to areas or objects of interest. Warp Whispers. The librarian can listen to the babblings of the warp and perceive the secrets of its denizens, sifting through the noise and maddening chatter to find grains of truth. It is a practice not without peril, however, and many librarians dare not even attempt such follies, though those of the Bloodravens know that true knowledge can never be gained without a degree of danger. The Bloodravens and the Inquisition. The Bloodravens have an interesting relationship with the Inquisition. Bloodravens librarians can be found in the Death Watch, and the chapter appears to also maintain unusually close relationships with the Grey Knights of the Ordo Malleus. It would appear that the Grey Knights, psychers all, feel an affinity for the Bloodravens and trust the chapter with the knowledge of their existence. The Grey Knights attached a task force to assist the Bloodravens during the Dark Crusade on the world of Kronos, for reasons unknown. It is interesting to note that the Grey Knights worked closely with the Bloodravens and not with other Imperial forces on the planet, And indeed, the Blood Ravens came into conflict at that time with the forces of the Astra Militarum, due to the unflinching and conflicting orders of Governor Militant Lucas Alexander and Captain Davian Thule. It should be noted that following the first two Aurelian Crusades, the Blood Ravens' home subsector Aurelia came under an increasingly powerful assault by the forces of Chaos, and a splinter of the Tyranid Hive Fleet Leviathan. With increasing evidence that large portions of the Blood Ravens chapter had been corrupted by Chaos, the Ordo Hereticus of the Inquisition commandeered several regiments of the Astra Militarum under the command of the Inquisitor Adrastia, and sought to launch an exterminatus campaign against all the inhabited worlds in the Aurelian subsector. As a result of the heroics of Captain Gabriel Angelos and those Blood Ravens who remained loyal to the Emperor, the taint of chaos upon the chapter was purged, and much of the subsector was saved from destruction. However, a deep and lingering suspicion still remains between the Blood Ravens and the Inquisition, and the Ordo Hereticus will continue to cast a wary eye upon the Blood Ravens and their new chapter master, Gabriel Angelos, for a long time to come. Chapter Combat Doctrine. The Blood Ravens believe that by studying one's enemies, one can predict their movements before launching any attacks, rather than charging in like an uncontrolled berserker, or using spontaneous lightning assaults. This has caused friction with other, more headstrong chapters. Those who prefer a clear-cut approach to battle have branded the Blood Ravens as cowards for their overly methodical approach to waging warfare. But this is an unfair assessment, for once the Blood Ravens take to the field, they fight with righteous fury, and a zeal the equal of any other chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. Once decided upon, the chapter never deviates from the chosen strategy, from its initial planning stages to executing it with ruthless efficiency. The thoroughness of their planning is such that every eventuality is accounted for, thanks to their librarians' powerful divinations. Their uncanny ability to predict enemy attacks or invasions have helped them to warn or respond well before other imperial organizations have even been aware of the threat. More puritanical figures within the Inquisition have whispered in dark tones of the sad tale of the Thousand Sons Legion and their fallen Primarch Magnus the Red. A path trod to damnation that began with the ability to predict such dire events, much like the Blood Ravens. In preparation for combat, members of the Blood Ravens invariably begin with intense study of their opponents and their tactics. All forms of reconnaissance and any relevant history or psychological resources are fully utilized in the course of this exhausting research. Only once all reasonable means have been undertaken to compile data is this information thoroughly analyzed. The analysis process may take solid days or even weeks, depending upon the reliability of the information acquired and the prior experience that the various battle brothers may have with their opponents. Finally, once a thorough analysis has been compiled, only then is a tactical solution to the issue devised. Invariably, during the course of this analysis and planning, command officers rely heavily upon the input and advice of any librarians available. These talented psychers are expected to use their talents to also plumb the depths of the warp for additional information upon their foes, and to conduct any divinations that may be appropriate. Among the Blood Ravens, these skills are every bit as crucial for a librarian as the more forceful talents that are applied during a direct physical confrontation. With a thoroughly compiled plan in hand, the Force Commander presents it to the Space Marines participating in the mission. Generally, these plans contain a myriad of alternative plans that account for an immense number of outcomes, often going into explicit and excruciating detail. Once these plans have been reviewed and accepted by the Battle Brothers, they are very seldom changed. Through the course of a given battle, the Blood Ravens almost always adhere rigidly to their plans. This is in part due to the fact that the agonizing level of detail permits the plans to accommodate a variety of different outcomes. However, it is more often due to the fact that the insight of their talented librarians almost always provides accurate data, such that the final plan is appropriate and consistent with the conditions encountered on the battlefield. At times, the Bloodravens willingly make deviations from standard Codex directives when creating their complex strategies. In those circumstances where they have additional information or an unusual piece of war gear, they make such items a cornerstone of their plans. In this way, the chapter maintains the beliefs that they follow the philosophy and general directives of the Codex Astartes, without being constrained by the fact that the text is 10,000 standard years in age. For though these battle brothers believe that their secrets must be carefully preserved, they also believe that their resources must be appropriately exploited in order to overcome their foes with a minimum of risk. Chapter Beliefs. Knowledge is power. Guard it well. Bloodraven's battle cry and chapter philosophy. The Bloodravens have a deep belief in the Emperor, perhaps because they do not know who their Primarch is, which leads them to give praise to the Emperor with a fervor greater than almost any other chapter. Like most Astartes, they venerate him not as a god, but as the mightiest of men, a belief that often brings them into conflict with the ecclesiarchy. A common battle cry for the chapter is, "For the unknown Primarch and the Emperor." The Bloodravens venerate knowledge and consistently seek it out and guard it. Their motto is, "Knowledge is power, guard it well," a maxim held firmly by all the chapter's librarians, and central to the core beliefs of the chapter. As their quest for knowledge echoes many tenets of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the chapter maintains close ties with the priesthood of Mars. Ofttimes the Bloodravens will join forces with Mechanicus explorator fleets in their search for archaeotech and lost knowledge in the unknown quarters of the galaxy. The Bloodravens are often known to seek out sites of lost artifacts, fabled writings, and ancient relics to deny them and the secrets that they hold to the arch-enemy. To achieve this, they rely heavily on their librarians both to lead the continuing search for new additions to their holdings and to keep the secret archives in order and compile new records. The Bloodravens believe that information is the greatest weapon available to them in the fight against the Emperor's enemies. The Bloodravens are a proud and secretive chapter, obsessed with ritual, history, and the acquisition of knowledge, most especially for the truth of their beginnings. This gap in the Bloodravens' history has led to endless speculation as to the exact origin of the chapter, and what could have happened to expunge such a large and important portion of their history from their lore. It is this focus that has driven their ongoing quest to discover more information of all kinds. This quest has unquestionably subjugated Bloodravens' battle brothers to an increasing exposure to heretical knowledge. Some from outside the chapter question the wisdom of their pursuits, when they could safely embrace the security of ignorance. For blessed is the mind, too small for doubt. Because of the many facets of their investigations, the Bloodravens often work closely with the members of the Adeptus Mechanicus. It is not uncommon for groups of librarians to be dispatched with an army of servitors and a number of Space Marine squads to uncover a lost artifact whose location has been recently unearthed or revealed through ritual divination. This has brought the Bloodravens into direct conflict with the Inquisition on several occasions, as many of the items they seek are touched by the ruinous powers. The Bloodravens insist that it is their duty to hunt down and oppose the forces of Kairas wherever they may be, and that by recovering and destroying the tools of chaos, they deny the arch-enemy their use. However, the Bloodravens have been less than forthcoming regarding any proof of the destruction of any of the hundreds of artifacts they are said to have procured. Such actions do nothing to allay their critics. When rumours about the Bloodravens began to circulate in the aftermath of the Third Aurelian Crusade, inquisitors from both the Ordo Malleus and Ordo Hereticus headed for Subsector Aurelia determined to discover the truth. Alas, their expeditions coincided with the emergence of the Great Rift. They have not been heard of since, and are presumed dead, lost in the deadly tangle of warp storms that has cut the galaxy in two. The ancient chapter master and chief librarian, Azariah Vidya, is the single Space Marine most revered by the Bloodravens. While he is not believed to have been active at the time of the chapter's founding, he is credited with the formation of their many traditions. While a normal Space Marine, the Blood Ravens refer to him as the Great Father, a term that other chapters might use to identify their Primarch, or even the Emperor. Such a degree of idolatry expressed towards a fellow battle brother is certainly uncommon, but seems to fill the void in the chapter's iconography due to the lack of knowledge of their predecessor chapter and Primarch. Their views towards the Emperor are in keeping with the most common Space Marine beliefs. The Blood Ravens deeply respect the Emperor as their creator and leader, but they do not follow the teachings of the Imperial cult and do not believe the Emperor is divine. There is little information available, even amongst the chapter's legends, concerning its leadership prior to the Great Father assuming the mantle of Chapter Master. Many scholars amongst the Adeptus Administratum believe that it was his legendary role as both Chief Librarian and Chapter Master that has led the Blood Ravens to value librarians so highly amongst their battle brothers. Since Chapter Master Angelos has taken on the command of the Blood Ravens, they have renewed their devotion to combating and overcoming the ways of chaos. This is in large part due to the heresy that he uncovered within the chapter, and may be a consequence of the corruption that he found on his homeworld of Cyrene. Under his direction, all of the chapter's traditions regarding the warp are currently being scrutinized. Its leadership is now well aware that the Blood Ravens can ill afford to lose any further members to treason or heresy. Chapter Gene Seed. The Blood Ravens' greatest mystery concerns the history and reasons behind their founding. A large part of the chapter's ongoing quest to recover lost information is in the fervent hopes of discovering their origins. Because of their unusually high number of battle brothers who possess psychic talents, the Adeptus Mechanicus has tested their gene seed for mutation or chaos contamination at a substantially more frequent interval than is normally required. Even through the course of these countless investigations, the Blood Raven's gene seed has consistently shown a high level of stability and purity. At the same time, it is unusual that it shows no consistent traits that could be used to link it to the genetic lineage of any of the other Primarchs. Thus far, there has been little evidence of mutation, and nothing that points to their gene seed as a source of the Blood Raven's disproportionate number of psychers, or the unusual potency of the psychic powers they do exhibit. There had been much speculation regarding which of the first founding legions the Blood Raven's gene seed is derived from. Both the Blood Angels and Raven Guard have been suggested, but these are likely to be based on nothing more than the similarity of names between the chapters. Other persistent rumors say the Blood Ravens may have derived their genetic stock from the Dark Angels gene seed, but no definitive facts have ever been presented to establish the true source of the chapter's genetic material. The lack of records pertaining to whom they descend from implies that they were created in anticipation of a specific purpose. To counter some threat to the Imperium in centuries past that has since been dealt with and defeated, or from a source that was considered so shameful that all records of the connection between the Blood Ravens and their progenitors had to be hidden from future generations. The truth of their origins is sought above all other knowledge by the Blood Ravens themselves. Secrets of the Dark. Blood Ravens have an abiding understanding of many of the dark secrets of the galaxy as a result of their ongoing quest to understand their past and the prodigious number of librarians seeded throughout the chapter. This generates a thirst for understanding the mysteries surrounding the Blood Ravens and is further fueled by the principles of the chapter and the value it places on knowledge and secrets. A thirst instilled in many battle brothers by the chapter's librarians and their own quest to slowly uncover the past. In time, a Blood Raven Space Marine's hunger to learn more of their chapter's past or uncover the dark forbidden lore of the galaxy can lead him to recklessness and even the dangerous line between understanding and embracing the forbidden. Even though the chapter remains fiercely loyal, and its commanders and most powerful librarians are well steeled against the perils of the warp and its deadly secrets, many who come into contact with the Blood Ravens see their desire to learn the hidden knowledge of their enemies and delve parts and pasts of the Imperium best left untouched as the first sign of corruption and taint. To a Blood Raven's battle brother, though, the drive to gain knowledge can be too much, and where a more reluctant or cautious Imperial servant might leave a book unopened, or a vault sealed and untouched, the Battle Brother must learn of its contents. Perhaps somewhere out there in the dark are the clues that would lead the chapter to better understanding its past, or even uncovering the identity of its Primarch. At the very least, a Battle Brother that adds new lore to the great librarians of the chapter will always be well received and honored for his diligence and his respect for the greatest weapon of all, knowledge.